Hola, hola, familia, and welcome back for Benvenidos to Tech and Tequila, the podcast where we talk about tech you need, the systems you build, the business you grow, and the lifestyle you're creating all along the way. And of course, we do it with a little bit of tequila. I'm your host, Lopez Shelby, aka your Techie Chica. Of course, I'm the founder of Shelby Technology Solutions, a trusted technology firm to small and mid-sized businesses, an entrepreneur, podcast host. Of course, I'm a mom and a grandmother, and someone who deeply believes that business should create opportunity, not just revenue. Because at the end of the day, the best businesses don't just make money, they make impact. And today's conversation is one that is very close to my heart because it's about something that affects every community, every economy, and every family. Opportunity. The opportunity to work, the opportunity to rebuild, the opportunity to create a better future. And sometimes all someone needs is someone to open the door. So what a lot of people do not realize, for lots and lots of people across communities, the biggest barrier to building a better life is not ambition, it's actually access. And that can be access to mentorship, access to guidance, and of course, access to different professional services, access to someone who believes in them enough to say, let me help you take your next step. And that is exactly what today's guest is doing through her work with Prosperity Employment Outreach. Now, I would be remiss if I did not just go ahead and, of course, welcome the amazing and wonderful Kim DeLaPena here today. So welcome to the podcast, Miss Kim.
Thank you.
First off, I definitely think that your organization is helping people overcome barriers with employment. So whether that's a lack of resources, lack of mentorship, gaps in employment history, or simply not knowing where to start. And what I love about this mission is that it recognizes something powerful, and that is that a job can change everything, not just the individual, but for their family, their confidence, their future, and of course, their community. Now, Kim, I've known you for quite a few years, but for our listeners who may not know you, if you wouldn't mind, kind of give a brief introduction is like what you do, where you're at, and of course, how you came about with Prosperity Employment Outreach.
Sure. I'll start at the beginning. So I was in the news media for quite some time, and I specialized in outside employment sales. And the recruiters just kind of took me under their wing, and they become my friends, and they taught me a lot about recruiting and employment. And my boss's boss came to me one day, and he was like, I want you to create Hearst's very first job fair. And I'm like, super young, like 25. And I was like, great, absolutely, I'll do it. What's a job fair? And so from the ground floor up, I started putting together Hearst's job fair here in Midland. And it was such a community success, but it was also a success for Hearst, a success for the individuals. And so I built it from the ground floor up for many years, and then had the opportunity to share that knowledge with the Houston Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle, all of the major metro newspapers. And at the same time, the team onboarded Yahoo Hot Jobs, which was the first digital employment out there in that world. And so we actually retrofitted the newspaper for that. And so long story short, many, many years later, that Yahoo Hot Jobs sold to Monster, and those job fairs and what used to be Yahoo turned into the Monstrous job fairs. And so those are actually my blueprint. And after many years in the news media and doing that, I opened up my own business doing recruiting and job fairs across the United States. And so for the last 15 years, that's what I've exclusively done while staying in the news media and staying connected to where my heart is. And in 2023, I started Prosperity Employment because seeing all of the people coming into the job fairs and all the people I taught to during recruiting, there wasn't help for them. Recruiters don't have time, staffing agencies don't have time. And so what the nonprofit was created to do is to help individuals with resumes and with all of the information that they needed to really kind of have those tools to help prop them up and get them out in maybe from a low paying job to a higher paying job. And so that's kind of really where prosperity came from, was just the need and the heart of wanting to help.
Kim, I love that introduction that you did, because it basically goes into what was going to be my first question, which was, what made you decide to start your organization of Prosperity Employment Outreach, which you really answered. So I know you talked about you spent years working in recruiting and workforce development. What are some of the biggest barriers that you feel like people face when they're trying to find employment that most people don't see or don't think about?
Yeah, it's something I actually talked about this morning. You kind of hear actors in Hollywood that they get typecast into specific roles, that they can only do, rom-coms, or they can only do action. And in reality, they have a wide band of experience and talent. Well, employees get the same thing. And we see a lot of it when people go to work in fast food, that they have a really hard time breaking out of that, and that recruiters sometimes can only see those skills. Same for sales. So I've been in sales the majority of my career, and sometimes recruiters have a hard time seeing me outside of that. When in reality, I've ran a business for 15 years. Yes, I did sales for it, which is a huge part, but there's so many other things that I'm able to do. And a lot of people in our community are the same way. They get typecast. And so it takes specialized help on their resumes to be able to highlight what those skills are, or them taking a quick refresher class in college or trade skills to help break them out of that cycle. There's so much intricate stuff that needs to be done with resumes and things like that I think it really holds individuals behind. And so that's kind of one of the many things that we do to help people propel themselves into different areas of employment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you point that out, because I know that back in the day when I was a manager or a hiring manager, I was really looking for somebody with more like a customer service skill set per se. And I was open to finding that wherever I could find it at. So like, what you're talking about, like fast food restaurants, things like that, having that openness. But I know that a lot of times, especially with, we'll say, the advent of AI possibly having a little bit of effect on this, like, when you think about like it going through and it's going to be like, not this person, because they don't have that skill set. But
that's exactly right.
Yeah, so many people can do so much more, I guess, than what it shows on there. And I think that
it does. And having a resume that is tailored to that specific job really helps, but most people don't know how to go about doing that. And now we've entered, the AI generation, and AI has really taken the humanity out of recruiting. And back before, when you could at least get your resume in with a human, those eyes and that potential of, I can transfer these skills. Now we're fighting a machine that is looking for very specific keywords, very specific tools and things like that, and not seeing the potential in humans. And we really do get typecast now, because we've removed the humanity so much out of recruiting. And so by getting in there and helping individuals get that perfected resume is a big help to them. It's so complex. There's so many different complex things when it comes to recruiting and interviews.
Yeah. Well, and I know that, one of the things that I was going to ask you was, you don't just focus on job placement, and obviously you're talking about resume guidance, but you also have things like mentorship, professional clothing. Why are these pieces so important to helping someone either rebuild their confidence or be able to go for that next job or that next position?
Well, it is about confidence. And if you if you feel like that you're out of date or that you're wearing old clothes or you don't look the part, it does something to our psyche. And people don't feel like that they're worthy of that position, so they don't try as hard or they just simply don't show up. And mentoring is such a key piece to this, especially for individuals that have gone through the prison system or had some type of run-in with law enforcement. And so we have a specific program where those candidates actually are mentored by business owners and some of our VPs and some of our general managers here in Midland that have gone into the prison system themselves have come back out, put a life back together for themselves, and are leading businesses. That mentorship, especially in that case, is priceless because it helps them to build that confidence back and to be able to see what's possible. And I think that
Yeah, no, I was actually going to say I absolutely love that. I think we're on the same wavelength because that was my next question, which was about talking about giving someone second chances with employment and why that's so important both for individuals and for businesses. So
yeah, it is. It is. Giving somebody back their sense of pride and giving them back their confidence. There's nothing like it. And we help with the resume and things like that, but the mentor part of it, we even have a fresh start haircut program where we have one of our volunteers, he's a board member, actually gives free complete hair makeovers and free clothing from shoes on up. And we really help to put these individuals' confidence back into place and giving them the training, the skills, everything that they need to be successful. And we're seeing that it's actually making a difference in these individuals' lives.
I love that because that leads into the idea that sometimes it's not just about that particular individual. It's about something that they've experienced in life or something that they've seen. So your organization is helping people break those kind of cycles that, like I said, can exist for generations. How can access to the right, career or job path really change that trajectory for a family and for a person?
It's not just for, like you said, it's not just for that person, it's for their children and their children's children. And we're getting to reap those benefits and we get to see it. We have individuals that come to us that, their children are on welfare because the mom is struggling or the dad is struggling. And so we're able to put them through paid counseling, give them all of the skills that they need, and they go on to get a better job. Their children do better in school. They get better grades. They make better choices. They stay out of trouble because those parents maybe are home more or they have more resources for better daycare. That the outcomes from a better job or a better career are just exponential. It's really amazing. And we have seen that firsthand with some of these individuals where their children are benefiting from it, and we know that it's going to give them a better life and a better outcome, and it will continue down to the next generation because they've seen that parent go back to school or whatever it is, and there's hope at the end of that tunnel.
No, and I think that's the thing. I always make this correlation that for anyone who doesn't know me that well, I'm a little on the hippy dippy side, but I like to talk about manifestation as it's the ability to imagine a different life for yourself and to think about if you grow up thinking this is all I'm ever going to do, you can't imagine that different lifestyle, right? And so while, like I said, while it's a little bit hippy dippy, it's more about having the ability to see like, hey, I can have this outcome and have like, a more can-do attitude for lack of a better term. But yeah, definitely.
Well, it goes back to that typecasting again, that if you come from, a family of immigrants and low education and like that, that's what you typically see for yourself because you get typecast into that. And we have to help individuals to be able to see more in themselves. And it is possible.
Yeah, and I love that. Now, one thing we haven't talked about yet, but I did find extremely interesting is you guys have a mobile career and clothing trailer. Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about that, like how it came to be and, why meeting people where they're at matters so much?
Oh my gosh, it's life changing meeting them exactly where they're at. So United Way was wonderful, and they helped to actually pay and put this program together. And so what we did is we created a mobile career and clothing trailer, and so we're able to take clothing into the community, take our laptops, take all of the information that we need for employment, go set up in some of the harder hit areas of Midland and Odessa at job fairs, at community rallies, whatever it is, and we can actually give individuals services right then and there. But we also are putting together community events, bringing in recruiters that we work with, bringing in food partners and like that. So when they come in, those individuals not only get the employment help, which is the resumes and connections and the clothing, but they're able to get food resources and make connections in the community that's going to help that family moving forward. And when you take it into a harder hit area like what we're doing, it's literally help immediately in that area, because not everyone has a car. Not everyone can go to our building in between Midland and Odessa. And so going into those areas, we're even taking one more barrier away from them, which is, bringing the services to them. And that in itself is a huge blessing to be able to have this career and clothing trailer.
Yeah. I love because that makes it way more accessible. They're not trying to like get an Uber or get a Lyft or whatever it may be, because you are right. Not everybody has a vehicle to get from point A to point B, so to speak, or the ability, they may only have one vehicle, which stretches it pretty thin.
It is. And transportation, it will always be a very large factor when it comes to employment. And so that's why sometimes some individuals can only work in certain fast foods or in certain areas because they're walking to work. And so if we can give them opportunities, if we can let them visit with companies that may have transportation. There are companies here in West Texas that actually will pick up their employees. And so if we make that introduction for them, they're one step closer to getting themselves out of poverty.
No, and I love that. Kind of the flip side of this is if you yourself could sit down with every employer in West Texas, obviously, or let's say globally, anybody listening to this, and share one message about untapped talent in communities, what would you want them to understand or have a better understanding about?
To stop having the West Texas mentality that there's plentiful work for everyone. We do have a lot of work, but it leaves a lot of individuals out. And so we need to really kind of start looking at things from different standpoints. Sorry, there's a lot of feedback. I'm not sure what's going on. That we need to kind of start looking at recruiting from a different viewpoint of where we can have individuals that can change their skills. They can grow into a different position, people that we can train. And that's the biggest one right there, is to help individuals to be able to train to get into that position. If it's something that doesn't require a specific degree or a specific skill, that we can work with them and move them up. We have one young man that we've worked with that he wanted to be a heavy equipment diesel mechanic, and he has steadily worked his way up, and he's now he's definitely on that path. He's working locally as a heavy equipment diesel mechanic, and they're showing him the ropes. And he didn't go to specialized school for it. He didn't get a 4-year degree for it. They're literally breaking him out as a heavy equipment diesel mechanic. And that's kind of where I want recruiters to start being able to see the possibilities. We do have a low unemployment rate, but we have a lot of people who are working, sometimes even full-time jobs, but they're still in the poverty level. or they are in the ALICE population, which is the working poor. And so if we will start moving some of those people into positions where they can be trained hands-on, we can even lower that number a little bit farther.
No, I love that. That really leads into my next question. I know you were talking about that gentleman, but what has been a moment, obviously, with your work with Prosperity Outreach that really reminded you, like, this is why I started this is the mission, and this is why it matters? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you have lots of moments, but what's something that stands out to you?
A lady that came and saw me last week, that when we have an emergency food pantry, we don't have a full-size food pantry. We have food long enough to be able to help sustain people until they can get to a food pantry. And she came to me, and she was kind of forced into the family business, which was landscaping. And her body is just not cut out for it. And she's also not cut out to do house cleaning, and that's what her family knew. And she's feeling the pressure of that, and she doesn't know where to go. And so I started talking to her about our educational help and our skilled training and everything that we have to offer, plus the emergency food. And she started crying because she could kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel of some help. And that's it just sticks with you, that how blessed you are, and that you may not ever had any employment issues. You may not have ever struggled. Take that and try to focus on somebody else and look at it through their eyes and their struggles. And you might start seeing where West Texas needs a little bit of support for employment. Look at it from somebody else's viewpoint. And for her, I put myself into her shoes, and I'm so glad that we're able to help her and give her that support. And there needs to be more support for that, because that's just one of the many people that we deal with that are stuck in that position.
No, I was going to say, I just did a previous episode that's going to release this upcoming week with McNeese kids. And he talked about that kind of experience. Obviously, he doesn't do the same thing you guys do. He's in Dallas. Their main focus is on feeding kids and helping kids. But it's giving people the hope, like the esperanza, and the hope of there is something better. And there is this light at the end of the tunnel. And I love that. For any of our listeners who feel inspired by what you're doing, how can people help support Prosperity Employment Outreach? And, obviously, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Everything from volunteering to holding clothing drives for our program, to if you have skilled trades, like if you are a hairstylist or a recruiter and you have a few hours per week or even per month, donate your time. Come and help. There's so many different things that we can use your skills with. Or if you just want to sit down and help mentor people, that's really the biggest thing that you could possibly ever do to help Prosperity Employment. And they can get a hold of us by going to our website at prosperityoutreach.org, or they can text me directly at 432-889-9107.
I love it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on. And I love that you pointed out, because I want to make sure that everybody hears this in case you don't. It's great if you can make donations, because I'm sure Prosperity loves having donations to help with what you're doing. But you know what? Always, right? But the other aspect to that is, if, let's first say, for whatever reason, you're not in the financial situation you can do that, you can always volunteer your time. There's always something that you can do to help, whether that's, sharing a post, I say advertising, but putting something up for a nonprofit. And, like I said, I want to go back to volunteers, because without volunteers, in general, most nonprofits can't, do the magic and bring the hope that they want to bring. Kim, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, for the work you're doing, because conversations like this are so important. Because while, I focus on obviously tech and business and entrepreneurship, a big chunk of that still is about community and people, right? And kind of like what we were saying with the advent of AI, we've got to like adjust how we help people and how we bring light to things that may be overlooked. So I really want to thank you so much for helping people grow, obviously helping people rebuild, and helping people step into the opportunity. And, obviously for investing in the community. So thank you again, Kim, so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Kat. It was good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, familia, before we officially wrap up today's episode, I want to take a moment to reflect on the conversation with, of course, the amazing Kim DeLaPena, the Executive Director of Prosperity Employment Outreach. And while I was reflecting and thinking about this, what stood out to me most is just how much corazon is behind the work she and all the amazing volunteers are doing. Today's conversation was such a powerful reminder that real impact is not always flashy. Sometimes it looks like showing up consistently. Sometimes it looks like creating opportunity. Sometimes it looks like building the kind of support that helps people move forward in a real and lasting way. And that is exactly why I'm so grateful that we got to have this conversation today. Now, of course, before we close out, you already know we're going to have a tequila moment, or this would not be Tech and Tequila, right? And today I am sipping on Código 1530 Rosa. And let me tell you, this was provided by BCN. And honestly, this tequila feels like a perfect pairing for today's episode. First of all, it is absolutely gorgeous in the glass with a soft blush pink color. But beyond pretty, it has some depth too. Código 1530 Rosa starts as a Blanco tequila and is rested in a Napa Cabernet barrel, which gives it its signature Rosa color. And this smooth, elegant finish, it still has that crisp agave profile, but there is also something softer and more layered about it. It feels intentional. It feels refined. And after a conversation like today, that's just not fitting. That is the perfect finish, because the conversation with Kim was rooted in purpose. It was all about community, opportunity, and the kind of work that changes lives. And I love when the tequila matches the energy of the episode. And while we're here, I also want to give a special shout out to BCM for providing today's tequila and for supporting Tech Plus Tequila, or Tech and Tequila. Here on the show, we talk a lot about the technology that keeps businesses connected, secure, and moving forward. And that is why I always appreciate getting to highlight companies like BCN. They understand how important strong communications and connectivity are to the bigger picture of your business. Because when your infrastructure and your technology are working the way they should, your business can serve better, move better, and grow with a lot less friction. So thank you to BCN for being part of today's episode, for supporting this conversation, and for bringing a little extra flavor to today's tequila moment. We appreciate you, and we're grateful to have you as part of the Tech and Tequila familia. And before we go, I want to leave y'all with 3 things to think about from today's conversation. Numero uno, where in your community could you be a part of creating opportunity instead of just talking about change? Dos, who around you may need support, encouragement, or access to resources that you may be in a position to help connect them to? And tres, what would it look like for you to give back, not just when it's convenient, but as part of the way you lead, live, and build? And as a reminder, someone once told me, I want to say it was Lucy. Lucy told me once that always keep in mind that yes, nonprofits and organizations absolutely love when you donate money. But if you can't donate money, you can always volunteer in some way, shape, or fashion. And if for whatever reason you can't be able to physically be there and donate, you can always build awareness, share a post, talk about what they do. Obviously, I would say if you have a podcast, get on the podcast, but there are things you can do. So that is what I'm going to leave you with. Because conversations like this should not just inspire us for a little while, they should move us to take action. So if today's episode spoke to you, I want to encourage you to do more than just listen. Please consider supporting prosperity employment outreach in whichever way you can, whether that means giving your time, making a donation, volunteering, or simply helping spread the word about the work they are doing, because it all matters. If you have been looking for a way to make a real impact in people's lives and in your community, this could be a beautiful place to start. So, with that, if you've got a glass with you, whether it's tequila, cafecito, or sparkling water, raise it with me. So I hope you have your cafecito, your water, whatever time, depending on when you're listening to this, raised. Here's to Kim. Here's to prosperity employment outreach. Here's to purpose-driven work. Here's to community. And here's to building something that truly makes a difference. All right, salud. And you know what? That is a wrap for today's episode of Tech and Tequila. Thank you from the bottom of mi corazón for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for continuing to be a part of this growing community where we talk about the tech that supports your business, the systems that create more freedom, and the real conversations that remind us what all of this is actually for. So until next time, keep building with purpose, keep leading with corazón, and keep creating a business and life that feels aligned for you. And of course, keep your tequila close and your tech always working, always working. Salud, familia.